Trying to save my mask, it's slipping, falling on my face. I'm tripping.
Recently, I was told that I ought to be rapping about personal shit, my autobiography. Personally, I don't like to talk about me. My self-doubt stings like 100 honeybees. So, please promise that you won't make fun of me, even if you honestly think I'm just a wannabe. Totally artificial like a can of Sunny D. Cause how real can a talking bunny really be? Initially, my personality was pathologically shy. Try to say hi and just cry. At that point, you kinda have to run away and hide. Cause you're mortified that you're looking so undignified. Even though you're only 5, you know you won't survive. When social stimuli send you into overdrive, sensory wise, quickly overloaded, overstimulated, but you're super motivated, so you overcompensated. I read every book that I could find on how to socialize despite an overactive mind. Over time, I learned to get along just fine. If I'm as good as my word, you can surely trust mine. Trust me, I'm over that now, I must be. Hey, is it getting hot in here? Is it just me? Just breathe. This is no time to dry heave. Never mind, look at the time, I guess I'll just leave.
Trying to save my mask, it's slipping, falling on my face. I'm tripping, dripping.
You're legitimately mad at me and energizing me with an unlimited battery, effectively unaffected by every form of flattery. Cause I'll be screwed if I think what I do is satisfactory. Only really worry if you think I'm not a threat. I'm breaking a cold sweat at the sight of my silhouette. I bet it seemed cute before you knew I wasn't done yet. Thought I rhymed a little bony up until the sunset. My success, I will still be a perfect wreck. Like a schizophrenic king and just to keep yourself in check. Too young to die, it's too soon to quit. No regrets, cause I'm getting too old for that shit. Me and hip hop go hand in hand. Even if our love is one that you can't understand. How you do for then? Your favorite weekend in the sand. My fat back game stronger than a rubber band. Never study like my soul's equipped with rubber grip. Got an ass so fast, bounce back when I trip. I'm tripping right now, I'm gripping the mic now. Copy of the script and I'm flipping it right now. Audience raising an eyebrow till I beat up the beat so bad it's quitting like ow. Record executives recognize the cash cow, cause I'm betting 1,000 without batting a
Hello, let me stop playing my song. Tripping, trying to save my... Okay, that's enough. Okay, alright. I was just like playing my music until I had my shit together-ish. I'm gonna just do that for a while, because like, yeah. Alrighty. Hello, thank you for waiting. I am super slow, but I've arrived. Oh, okay, I wanted to start this discussion, and we can do it like abstractly without talking about specific ones, but what I thought of was discussing current models and theories about what autism even is.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. There's the one, so a friend of mine who's on the spectrum, and I ended up getting diagnosed because I was like, hey, did you think you might be on the spectrum? And they got checked out, and yes, they are. They have sent me a text the other day, and I think I'll end up covering this more in depth when I'm actually sitting down rather than doing the HCAT, but they were mentioning the extreme world theory. Let me try to see that. I think that's what that one's called. I've heard of it before too, and I've looked at it before. Intense world theory. And it's from 2007. Let me just read the thing. So, the intense world theory is a unifying theory of autism proposed by researchers Camilla Markram, Henry Markram, and Tania, I don't know, Rinaldi in 2007. This theory offers a novel perspective on the neurobiology and cognitive aspects of autism spectrum disorders. Key principles. The intense world theory posits that the core neurophysiological pathology in autism is 1. Hyperfunctioning of local neural circuits. 2. Excessive information processing and storage in the brain. I have arguments about this and the local thing, and I need to note that this is 2007, which means that what I'm basing it on was not yet established in the way that it is now about the grid cells, place cells. That takes until really like 2013 and honestly 2014 when the Nobel Prize gets awarded. Okay, so this leads, I think that's correct, by the way. It might be 2013 that, but I think it's 2014 that the Nobel Prize goes to them. Okay, so, okay. This leads to several key characteristics. Hyperreactivity, heightened responsiveness to stimuli, hyperplasticity, increased ability to form and strengthen neural connections, hyperconnectivity, excessive connections between neurons in local brain regions. Cognitive and sensory implications. According to the theory, these neurological differences result in hyperperception, intensified sensory experiences, hyperattention, heightened focus on specific stimuli, hypermemory, enhanced ability to store and recall information, hyperemotionality, amplified emotional responses, reframing autism. The intense world theory challenges traditional deficit-based models of autism by suggesting that many autistic traits are actually the result of enhanced rather than impaired brain functioning. This perspective views autism as a different, potentially advantageous way of processing information rather than a disorder or disability. And I would take gumption with this part because I think the root of it is in the disability. But again, I wonder where these researchers are and if they've looked at that. Implications for understanding autism.
And
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, this goes on for a while.
very quickly, right, is that just because part of the brain is functioning better, right, hyper advanced functioning, doesn't mean that that can't cause a disability, right? Because a disability is about like your living situation, your ability
Right.
to exist in the world. It's
Right.
not right. So like if in fact like if my muscles were all 1,000 times more efficient with energy, it would be a horrifying disability where any attempt to move would shatter my own bone.
Right. Exactly. Right. There's an optimal range for the task and the environment, and we can exceed that potentially. Yeah. Okay. Let me see.
Just because
Oh,
that
go ahead.
part that you read out and sort of disagreed with, I think it falls into that sort of language issue where people are doing like an up down with language.
Yes. Right. So even this framing, I think, reflects learning the light switching, which is hierarchical thinking. And I think that's also why autistic people, they say we have black and white thinking because we don't hierarchy at all.
Right.
We're saying, okay, well, don't do this or do this. That we can get, but not do this and then also that means here's a set of priorities. Like no, like okay. Let's see. Let me try to finish. I'll try to get through the whole thing quickly because it's actually longer than I realized. Okay, so all right. Advantageous way of processing information. Certain kinds of information is what I would argue, and that we don't process other kinds of information. Okay, implications for understanding autism. Sensory overload. The theory explains why many autistic individuals experience sensory sensitivities and overload. 2, social challenges. Difficulties in social interaction are attributed to an overwhelming intensity of sensory and emotional input rather than a lack of empathy or social cognition. And again, that's not what the social challenges are about. In my argument that comes from current neuroscience, that social skills are really global configurational information being exchanged so that they're exchanging information about the grid and the place cells on the grid where we don't have the grid from grid cells. Okay, so I disagree there. Restricted interest and repetitive behaviors. These are seen as coping mechanisms to manage an overly intense world, providing familiarity and predictability. I disagree with that too. I think that we use these place cell responses that we do have functioning in order to create also, thank you to whoever did a thing. I heard the alert. We create a reference about the world at large, like that we can infer. Like we have this specific information and we test it recursively. Does it break? Why does it break? When does it break? We're more attracted to things that don't break or that have the potential to survive the environment because we can't see the environment. So that's why I think we have it. So it's not familiarity and predictability. I mean, to an extent, yes, I can see that, but that's not really the function. And it's not the function in neurotypical people either because they also do this, but they can use social information to orient themselves information I could cut out there to orient themselves in space, whereas we don't. So we have to infer the rest of the orientation that we are currently having based on what the special objects tell us about that environment. So we have to revisit the special objects that give us good, high quality, meaningful information about the world that we can't see. Okay, potential treatment applications. The intense world theory suggests that intervention should focus on managing sensory input. I agree with this. Providing structured, predictable environments. I agree with this. And I think, is my thing broken again? Might be. We need those Okay, good. We need those environments to give us a chance to maximize how much we've learned about the unseeable world for us from the special interest objects. We need to contribute that to the world, and we currently are having more problems because we live in a world that has emphasized the global configurational abilities to the detriment of the local featural, and that's why we're creating problems we can't solve, because you can't solve a real problem with more social hierarchies and fantasies. That doesn't work. That will just create a narcissistic spiral, a death spiral of narcissism, if you will. Hello, and thank you for following. You're timed out because of account age. I think I know who you are too, so don't worry about that. I think we can undo that. It was just a precaution because obviously we have to avoid bullies. I will take the time off in a moment when I figure out how to do that. Okay, unless if you know how to do it. It's it's Posadabot. Yeah, hence, yeah, they're
You want them? Okay.
they're fine. I know who it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going over intense world theory. If it cuts out, by the way, I'm having some problems with the Wi-Fi router, so you'll just have to pop back in, and I apologize for that. So there may be a little bit of that hiccup. If you're on YouTube, I think it reboots too, but you have an option to look on YouTube if it's less disruptive, but hopefully it stops. I keep trying to figure out what's on. We may need a new Wi-Fi extender. Okay, so all right, let me try to get through this. Okay, 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 other intervention, gradually introducing new experiences in a controlled manner. I would disagree with this. I think new experiences still have to have the anchor objects in place prior to you interfacing, and you need to know which anchor objects are going to be there. So I have slightly different, but that follows from my theory being slightly different. Okay, however, it's important to note that some proposed interventions, such as withdrawing stimulation during infancy, have raised concerns and require further research. That sounds like a horrible idea, because that's the world we're going to have to live in, you know, but give us anchor objects. Right. Yeah. Okay, we're almost there. Almost there. Limitations and criticisms. I obviously have more. While the intense world theory offers an intriguing perspective, I think it's not broadly speaking wrong. I just think it needs the grid cell place cell model that comes with current research on the brain. Okay, so it has some limitations. It doesn't fully explain all aspects of autism, such as language delays or deficits in interoception. Again, I think I can explain that, and I think that our experience of processing the world is different enough that the language around us may not allow us to explain, and we may not be attracted to that language. So even like, what if the language delay is an attraction problem, and I was able to avoid that because I was hyperlexic in an environment with 2 autistic parents? So I was talking early and fast. So maybe we could get everybody speaking early potentially. I don't know. Or at least using language early if they're non-speaking. Okay, so let's keep moving on. The theory is primarily based on studies using the valproic acid VPA rat model of autism, and I'm somewhat familiar with this, I think, but I didn't know the term for it, and more research is needed to confirm its applicability to human autism. Some researchers argue that the theory may oversimplify the complex nature of autism spectrum disorder. Kind of, yeah. I think there is actually a relatively simple explanation, and I think it is the grid cell dysfunction, and then everything's downstream of that, personally. In conclusion, the intense world theory provides a thought-provoking alternative view of autism that emphasizes enhanced rather than impaired brain functioning. I think it's both. While it offers explanations for many autistic traits, further research is needed to fully validate its claims and explore its implication for autism treatment and support. So I think the intense world theory, along with monotropism, are well-organized observations prior to this grid cell thing. And if you look at research about grid cells in neurotypical people, that is establishing, and this has even made it to like Popular Science. So I think there was like a Time magazine special where I saw this broken down. So this isn't just in research now, we're starting to have it disseminated to the public. But basically, grid cells, making the grid, and then understanding people on the grid, right, like in a physical sense, is social skills. So social skills, and what we can't do is hierarchy and relationship intensity. Like, so, and it's all actually built on the metaphor of moving through space. Like, hierarchy is, are you close to a point in space that is considered important? Have you arrived there? This is why I say doing is arriving. And it's how close are you to the other people. So literally when they say, man, I'm really close to that person, means I have an intense good relationship with them. So it's actually that
language from embodied cognition is right. You literally think of yourself and this person being very close together, right, and like the closer, and like even like the romance language, we talk about people like basically overlapping, right, or sharing one heart. Right, just so.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and Jamie says, I feel like the dichotomous thinking is relevant here for some reason. It is. So here's what I think is happening. I think not just autism, but I also think like schizophrenia spectrum and to an extent ADHD, we can use very black and white thinking to cope with the inability to advance ourselves through a hierarchy. So a hierarchy creates things like prioritization. Like it says, in a very flexible way that depends on the other agents moving on the grid, that this is important for me to do because these other things will help or impede me getting to a goal. So there's a goal in space. So the main metaphor for the person without an issue, like autism, I'll say ADHD changes your goals a lot is what it seems like, or schizophrenia where past information is being projected into the real world space right now. You cannot make it to the goal. And so it's like, okay, well, why don't I just memorize a set of rules instead? And I'll just use those all the time. And maybe I won't have problems, but that doesn't actually work. And in typical society, society, they use black and white thinking, but it's actually still very flexible. But so they can change who's the good guy and who's the bad guy as social information comes in. Go ahead.
So like this is basically two entire different ways of problem solving, and like putting it into that language makes me understand why we see this sort of like I'm from Mars, you're from Venus thing between autistic and autistic people, right? Because if they have a goal, their brain is able to like do everything on the fly to keep them navigated, oriented towards that goal using grid cells. So they don't need specific rules to navigate because they know where they want to get to, right? Whereas I can't navigate that way, so I focus solely on the rules. And the rules have to make sense because I don't have another part of my brain that I could rely on to navigate these areas when the rules don't apply or whatever.
Right.
I don't think that came out quite as well as wanted. But...
You got something really good too that I wanted to point out that I wouldn't have gotten to see. So there's places that we really enjoy because the rules are very specific, especially if they're etiquette rules. Like this is this, it's okay to have this behavior, but not that behavior always, because this behavior helps us to do this special interest probably thing. Like this thing we're building will be built better if there's no talking here, right? Something like that. Like that's how ballet works, right? Yeah. Yes, like the library. Yes, we fucking love libraries. My brother's a librarian, and I think he's got some of this aspects. So yes. Yeah, so the rules, we understand rules best if there is because this thing will be built better, and we give people the benefit of the doubt if they've directly stated a rule or implied strongly a rule, that there's something that's going to get built if we follow it. And we can feel very wronged. And this is the whole like, oh, autistics have a sense of justice. Okay, but also we can feel very wronged when it turns out there is no thing being built. Why are we following these rules? There's no thing being built. For what fucking reason did we do this? Yeah.
Right.
Oh wait, let me turn this off. So I let me just check in with Jamie. It feels like drowning when I'm just trying to okay, doing everything. Yeah, I used to go to school early and go to library and help them sort out the newspaper. That's so cute. Miss Justice going against the grain, but then causes us to do what we dislike others doing to them, and then they see that it gives them. So the ammunition thing, and I think again, I think this extends. I think we have a lot in common with people who have like schizophrenia spectrum, including like the kinds that don't have any hallucinations that get thrown into like cluster A. I feel like we need to fix that, by the way, just noting that. And also ADHD and also combinations thereof. We're all trying to find a way to interact with the world where other people find us, broadly speaking, helpful, because we're not sociopaths. However, we end up getting in the way. And also, we can get scapegoated by actual sociopaths at that point, who are very able to manipulate people because they do see the grid. And if maybe they don't even see place stuff, maybe that's their problem. Maybe they're the inverse of this place grid problem. I don't know. That would be really interesting to see. I've never looked into that. That just occurred to me. So, but we need to be able to tell people I'm going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong stuff because I can't see the damn grid. I'm not doing it to make you upset or try to control you or trying to distract you from your goal or fuck up your way to the goal. I can't get any goals, man. I do something different.
So that idea of like an inverse, just I'd be like, well, that could be theoretically how sociopaths work if they don't have the like caring about details of objects and only operate the grids. They're like, well, okay, I have goals and nothing else matters except the goals,
right? Because
only the goals exist. Only, right? Like, who cares if this person or that person gets hurt or whatever? That has nothing to do with the navigational data.
And those weren't even clocked as features of a person potentially, so that can really mess them up of how they concept of themselves of people. Go ahead.
Right. Well, no, so I don't know enough about the different types of things other than grid cells in the brain, right? The things that are functioning in autism. But if something is going wrong with, like you're saying, the ability to like track features of objects and attach them to people, like, yeah, that's all. That's more of an aside anyway.
I'm just typing something from Hence's chat. Also, yay! And I'm gonna type this one on. Yeah, so go to libraries. It's like, go to the library, find the library, find a couple of libraries, find what's supposed to be the most peaceful library too, and then I think you learn a lot about the character of the place that you're going to be living. Like, what's their idea of peaceful and pretty, and like, ooh, it's a modern city. Ooh, it's an old city. Ooh, it's a traditional city. You know, just like, ooh, it's a very progressive city. Yeah, you'll totally see it all in the library. And it's a good place. Yeah. Yay, library. Yeah, leisure center. For me, it's ballet studio. If you have enough like background in ballet, you know, you don't get too intimidated by how much new information. But if you have a place that, there's no power dynamics in ballet besides are you really good at ballet? And that's it. Like, if someone imposes another power dynamic, like, it can happen because toxic cultures or whatever, but ultimately people are like, I hated that was unhealthy. It made us worse at ballet. Yeah, and Jamie, I'm glad that you have the swimming in your life too. That sounds like a really wonderful place to go. I can't swim, right? So it's like I can relate to people that like, oh, I couldn't get going on ballet. I was like, cool, I drowned. Okay.
You can't swim?
No. You want to hear the story? There's a reason. So I went to the YMCA with my brother, and you get to be like a tadpole or something when you first get there. And I had just learned about like child predators, like molesters and stuff. And I thought that the swim instructor, because he was looked a certain way, and I don't know why I decided this. I thought he could be one, so I wouldn't let anyone touch me. So if the swim instructor cannot touch you, you cannot learn how to swim. So I was at the wall kicking the whole time. To their credit, they did not. They listened to me, to their credit. Like, I'm from San Francisco, so maybe that's why. So they're like, okay, we're not going to touch you then. I was like, great. Thank you. So that was probably a better lesson, that if I say don't touch me, the adult won't touch me. But I did not learn how to swim. Yeah. So different lesson was taught, not swimming. Probably wouldn't have been very good at it because of the dyspraxia anyway. So there could have been some motivation to get out of it from that reason too. And I also am struggling to learn it as an adult because probably dyspraxia, and like people are like, oh, but you can dance. I'm like, well, that's a funny story. I was obsessed with it, and I fought through the whole dyspraxia thing. Ah. Oh, hey, you joined a walk. Congratulations, Jamie. Yay! And I like the little happy face. Socializing. But yeah, our socializing is different, and I think we're in a good like era in general. There's exceptions culturally depending on where you're at, but in general, we're in a way better place to say, oh, I'm on the autism spectrum. I have different socializing behaviors. If you notice them, I just want you to know I'm a friendly person and I like you, and it's okay to give me some blunt feedback. I know it'll feel weird, but it's okay because I'd like to still be here next week and next month. And if this works out ongoing without everyone being like, get that thing out of here. Okay, let me just check in before I go too off the rails. It is Housekeep-a-thon, which just means do space management, which I call space management, so it doesn't have words like hoarding, because I hate that shit. And I think it's horrible and had bad TV shows. So just look around your environment. The way I do processing that I highly recommend, I call it NODE, as in NOAD, but it sounds like NODE, which is kind of cool. It just is new things, old things, all things, do things. So it's kind of like, what's the new information? What's the old information? Let's interpret all of it together. And then your brain will just like actually give you motivation out of that, which is pretty cool. Like it's like you don't have to really do anything else. You'll just be, oh, that. So I would say like, look around your space. If you can have any sense of like, oh, that's kind of a new state, like that's a new state of my desk, or like that state has been like that a long time, and then you consolidate that and be like, well, that's what that is, like that's all of that, so that's the desk. You can even think about what the desk has been in the past that you liked more or less, and now that you've done that, your brain will be like, okay, and start to change the object the way that you actually want it to be, because I think we actually already know that. So yeah, so new things, old things, all things, new things.
So the way you just put that, I find really interesting because it reminds me of what I call a monster corner, which is like when a part of your room has become the place where you pile things that aren't sorted properly for so long that it's now you're just consolidating it as a mass of stuff that I can't interact with because it's in some state of needing to be changed, and you don't remember the details, and you just start to act as if there's like a black hole on that part of your house, right? Like your brain just skips over it. It's because we're like consolidating it and saying it's been like this for a long time, therefore it's unlikely I'm going to change it today. Right. So I'll not change it today. Right. And it just keeps going.
Right. And what we could do instead of that potentially is we would get to process the features of the thing now, whatever we have stored as the features of the things in the past, and even in counterfactual hypothetical pasts or futures that we've imagined, right? So we're doing, because imagination and memory are the same function, by the way. I strongly believe that line of reasoning in neuroscience is correct. So I'll say that. And then you have, what is it now? What has it been / has it been in my imagination, right? And then you're like, okay, what does all of that mean? So all of that means something. If you do the all things, there's like a meaning in that complexity, and you need to process that before you decide, and you will decide like automatically, oh, well, okay, now I do this. You'll just kind of feel yourself actually well, it's funny. You'll feel yourself start to just move towards it and start doing actions. And I'm like, hey, guess what, guys? That's what motivation is. We just never get to feel it because we don't have goal motivation. Hence what we were talking about earlier
Mm.
So if you don't know what motivation
Oh,
feels like, it's just your body being compelled to do actions.
right. And then, like, wouldn't we just have featural motivation?
Yes, correct. Yes. So you're giving yourself featural motivation.
Right.
Yes.
The other way to say it would be like object motivation, because features of objects.
Yes,
But like
exactly.
featural, I think might help me to think of it that way, because like I don't want to do the dishes because that's a goal,
Yes.
right? My
Yes.
brain doesn't interact with that. But I want to have dishes that I can cook with
Hmm.
when it's time to cook.
Hmm.
And therefore, it makes sense to, ahead of time, fix the dishes by cleaning them,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like completely changing the fashion of thinking about it
Yes.
might be really helpful in
Right.
so-called creating motivate. Oh, okay.
Mm.
Give me 1 second. Right. So there's all the self-help books, Jane, all the self-help books. And the parts that are like vaguely useful to people who aren't autistic are make a list and set goals and write out steps, right?
Hmm.
So we need to have our own version of that,
Yes.
because
Correct.
autistic people haven't figured out whatever that is yet, right? There is some version of what works in our brain with our local featural memories that will be that same sort of thing. And like you're probably like the idea of walking around your house and looking at objects that you're talking about when you start HCAT is probably the beginning of figuring out how to do that for us.
Mm-hmm. 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 Exactly.
Um,
Yes. And so yes, we need our own version. We've had to use the language of allistics, and they keep saying like, oh, will this help me? So they see that when we're suffering the most, they throw that at us harder, which is going to
mhm,
demoralize us and not motivate us. It's going to make us less motivated, because they're going to say like,
mhm,
so you want to arrive at this place, and actually their metaphor doesn't really
mm,
make as much sense. But they think of it that
mhm.
way. Like, so they're like, well, let's take steps to arrive at that place, even though the thing is an object. So it sounds crazy to us what they're suggesting, and it kind of is.
Right,
But yeah.
like I want to change the features of this object, and they're like, "Oh, you got to arrive at that place."
Right. And I'm like, what on earth
Yeah.
are you talking about? So the issue is, so for example, like object is tricky. So I started saying locus, because object, if you look at it, it's a thing that's thrown in the way of something. It's thrown in your path.
Mhm.
So that's also a problem, and that's
Oh,
that's
interesting.
that's our
Mhm,
problem too. We're in the way of their path. So you object to something, you
mhm,
projectile. It's an objectile. So it's not that we're more interested in objects than people, or things than people. We're more interested in the features of things, including living things. So then if you have one of us that the special interest, which it's more encouraged in girls, but anybody basically that's like, I think you had more of an interest in people's features, living things features. And like,
mhm,
oh, why are they interested in animals? It's a kind of thing, it's a living thing. We just care about the
mhm,
features. And then people have said, oh, you're not interested in people, you mean I'm not interested in the global configurational grid cell hierarchy, relationship, closeness, go to goal thing. Yeah, no, I'm not interested in that because I can't fucking see it. But that's not what you people are. You people are a set of features. You may acquire features through your doing as arriving, but I can only see the features you have. And this is also why we have a problem with liars. Fake it till you make it. I'm like, no, don't fake it till you make it. You don't have the features. Why are you doing that thing? You don't have the features to do that thing. What are you doing? How are you going to get the features? What if you never get the features? And then you make it, and now everyone has to pretend that the emperor has on beautiful clothes. Oh my God, Elon Musk. Like, yeah. Anyways, go on.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's why that's so the advice fake it until you make it is because our whole society has overdone the doing as arriving metaphor.
Yeah.
And so that like making it is like it takes the place of having the skills and should being the person to do a thing, right?
Correct. Yes.
Because if you just develop the skills, right, that's what you should do to become something, right?
Mhm.
You don't fake it, you develop skills. But
Mhm.
no, because having the skills to have a certain role in society
Mhm.
doesn't get you that role.
Mhm.
You
Exactly.
just have to fake it until you make it, because that's our whole society has been
Right.
revolved around this thriving hierarchy problem.
Yes, and our under and unemployment, if we could measure it more accurately, granted there's global reasons why this also wouldn't have worked out for us in different environments, but I think it's gotten worse and worse and worse for autistic people because we'll never be able to do fake it until you make it. We actually have to have the skill. But right now, fake it till you make it gives you the golden ticket to go into the room where technically you could get the skills or pay the entrance fee, but these are people that are doing as arriving exclusive, like and that's what I'm talking about. Why do we have so many sociopaths? Maybe that's what they are. So when they get it, the golden ticket, they're not going to build anything, they're not going to get the skills, they're going to get the next golden ticket, they're going to pay for the next golden ticket. And the way that wealth accumulates right now because of basically, like, if you own property, it gets more valuable over time, and then those become assets that you pass on to your probably neurodevelopmentally similar children. So we may be setting up like sociopathic paradise and autistic hell. And everybody hell, kind of, because it's not good for anybody, really, even the sociopaths. But that's my current working theory, is like that all of that is connected. And so autistic people are measurably doing worse because, yeah, it's as if we are being blocked because the order is totally backwards. It's not like this person is at this position of quote unquote hierarchical power because they have the abilities. It's they got there and everybody now believes they have the abilities. Like Trump is a phenomenal example, to the point that I think people are experiencing shared psychosis, like where they are no longer in touch with reality, and no matter what these authority figures do, you still believe that they have features they don't have, and the features that they do have that are even like mutually exclusive, like they couldn't possibly have these other features, many of them very antisocial and dangerous, these dangerous features, right? You're like, no, like we wouldn't put a dangerous person in a place of extreme authority over other people's lives, right? Because that people that arrive there have those features that are the good ones, not the dangerous ones. And now we've actually like watched people have really extreme problems with that, which could affect, I think, anyone. Could also affect autistic people. But yeah, so that's why I love the Emperor, having no clothes as a simple metaphor to explain it, or the Wizard of Oz. It's like Oz the Great and Powerful. No, he's not. He's not great and powerful. This is absurd. And for autistic people, that's going to be deeply upsetting and could be increasing our suicidality, or at least ideation. I mean, certainly increasing our suicidality, but it can create a lot of ideation problems. And then there's other inequalities about like our characteristics, where people say like, oh, well, people with those features are not allowed to be authorities and hierarchically important for often religious reasons, right? Like, and then who's the supreme hierarchical master? Some god figure, yes. And it's really important to realize that that's doing as arriving. I've said this before and I said it again because I think it's actually very profound. Doing as arriving, flip 90 degrees to the sky, is God. It's God. It's heaven and God at the top. Right? And we have to remember that if you go up and up and up, we just hit space. There's no heaven up there. So why are we thinking this way? Because it's doing as arriving. And it's magical doing as arriving because we can't fly.
If you get into the language of religion in the past, like heaven used to be called the highest heaven, or there's the Empyrean, which is like the heaven above the heaven. So it's like literally, it's just like the sky above the sky.
Yeah.
Right? It's just more up than up. Yeah.
And it's a fear of death because we have buried our dead for a very long time. So it's the opposite of death. So yeah, so we go up, even just the fantasy of immortality, we go up to be immortal, right? Like this is at some level I'm like, hey, humans, you have to like realize that you are like people need to study embodied cognition and like Lakoff's metaphors and stuff, and like Mark Johnson's work, who's Lakoff's partner and I think is even better and clearer and has good applications of this. You have to study this idea that like we have embodied metaphors and we're actually that simple, like we're like so that we can know we have two sets of embodied metaphors. That's what I think that Lakoff and Johnson don't have, is that actually you could have a meta category for even their like highest order containers, metaphor containers. You can actually diverge. You can split that, and there is. I mean, if it makes us feel happy, there is a kind of a dichotomy that's real, and that's doing as arriving, doing as building. Doing as arriving is evolutionarily older, and doing as building is extreme in humans because we have language, which is a doing as building. But we're using the language doing as building to describe doing as arriving and not realizing it. And I think that's actually the fundamental error in the species that's causing all of these problems. I think that's like, if we figure this out and have language around it, I think you could revolutionize the species. And also we might be able to if I'm being honest, we might be able to flag people that can't understand this. And even though they may seem cognitively capable, because they can't understand this, they're dangerous, in my opinion. Especially if they're, manipulative. And if somebody's manipulative, that suggests they use global configurational reasoning in some exclusive manner, right? They don't care what this does to people. They may say that they even have a sadistic enjoyment of what it does to people. I don't think they have that much control. I think that's cope, because I went 8 years to a school for gifted learning disabled kids, and I've heard cope, and I've done cope myself. It sucks to be disabled. It's a lot nicer to tell yourself a fantasy that those consequences that you can't even see you were doing were intentional. So I think that's part of the pathology as well. So maybe we can even start to reform or prevent some of these behaviors by getting ahead of that. So I think like I genuinely believe, and I've been working on this for a very long time. So maybe I did it, and also it'd be really cool if I did it, because I'm a woman and we're supposed to be at the bottom of the hierarchy. So the irony. I think this is what's up with the species, and if we can get a grip on this, we can change the entire trajectory, quote unquote. Like basically our species is rolling downhill. On the, let me think of the best image to do this. We're rolling downhill on the remains of all of these very temporary structures that were built to make someone win the doing as arriving competition. They did not care about the actual features, so they just built it to get to the next golden ticket. And that's what's actually sending us down into possibly self-annihilation.
So, like another thing to say is like worker bees follow the bee queen and build the hive around it, right? So like humans are acting as if this random person who's flying around is the bee queen, and we follow them.
You just need a new Wi-Fi extender. I think it's actually broken, which is very sad. Let me text my dad that. Okay, hang on, guys. So there, if you're here, OBS is attempting to reconnect, and the Wi-Fi extender is flashing red. I don't know if anyone can hear me. It's not good.
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, my Wi-Fi extender I think is actually just broken. I don't think it's the internet. I think something's gone wrong here. Okay. I think we're back. Wi-Fi extender is broken. Please be a little, I guess, gritty about rejoining the stream. I think we unplug it, count to 50. Okay. Redoing. Okay, following. Okay, I'm going to follow Kyle's instructions. If you're in YouTube or the other one, you might be able to see this. Okay, I will be right back. Unplug. Okay. Be right back. Sorry about this. This sucks. 3. Although I can hear you. That's weird.
Yeah.
Wait, how come I can do that?
Weird.
What the fuck?
I don't know.
It's unplugged. Oh, I guess I don't need the, oh, I don't need the extender for this. That's weird. What is happening? Is the extender even doing anything? Or is it just cutting us off?
So is it like currently unplugged?
Yeah.
So you have internet right now. So before you plug it back in, maybe just try streaming again and see what happens.
Well, I think I am. That's what's wild. It didn't
Oh,
disconnect.
okay.
Should I just keep it unplugged?
Then just don't plug it back in if it's causing problems, right?
Yeah. Why don't we just try this and see what happens?
This would make sense.
That's weird. Okay, folks. Welcome to I Don't
actually-
Understand.
This is a perfect example because I was thinking about, like you said, follow the instructions that Kyle gave you. But we were like, oh, we just noticed a feature of a thing. This feature means this about reality. Let's put away all previous instructions, right?
Right,
Like, those
right.
don't matter anymore.
Right.
Because something was different about reality.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Those instructions may be for a different object. Maybe that's not the object I have. Or the object. That's why I was saying the locus. I was trying to get new language. Yeah.
Right, the locus.
Mm-hmm.
And so one interesting thing about objects is they're a category we create. There's just like reality or the universe and then different subsections of it. So anytime a feature of an object is different than you thought it was, it means you're in a different reality than you thought you were.
Exactly.
Right? So Kyle sent you a set of instructions, but you found out that you're in a different reality than you thought you were. So the instructions he sent you probably aren't useful in this reality. So you don't need them.
Right, right. And now we'll find out what reality I'm in. Maybe it'll cut out again. But even though when it did cut out, I would look at the extender and the little thing would be flashing red, which still could be somehow tracking the core problem, which will still afflict us. But we shall find out. Okay, and then Jamie's back in chat discussing. That reminds me of the experience. Okay, the work discussion thing before the disconnect. That reminds me of the experience requirement when they die. Who have you got left? The people you neglected, and they are now your best bet. But we're unnurtured. Yeah. Okay. Actually, can you go get say more, Jamie? Like, tell me more about that, because there's a couple of things that you could turn your attention to and flesh out there, and I'd be curious which one you think is most interesting. Yeah, because so and then just to buttress up what you were saying, and just for everyone to see is, so Lilith, Enigma's hanging here. I'm Jane. Okay, so and Lilith entity, because Lilith is part of a system. Okay, so plural. Okay, so okay. Yes. And okay, so yeah, you're in a different universe, right? So it's like so the autistic project becomes, what universe am I in? What's the most likely one based on the information that I've collected and the complexity between the information? So I think of this, I have this metaphor that I developed talking to ChatGPT, and it was mentioning webs. I was like, no, it's not quite that. It's not that. It's having like a resin-filled straw, and that's time, right? But we look down the resin-filled straw at the objects, the locus embedded, the features embedded, and then the patterns that makes based on like what we have so far, understanding that the straw continues past human stories and understanding, like it goes beyond that. So and there's projections too, so there's things that are like holograms projected into the straw that may or may not be real, and we want to know with what degree of certainty are these embedded objects embedded, like when people have made an assumption, how confident were they in that? And then we can be really attracted to systems that let us analyze that. But that analysis can be criticized as or I guess discouraged or even punished as like, oh, you think too much about it, like, oh, you're deep, but you're too deep, like you're it's not that deep, bro. And I'm like, yes it is. In fact, it's deeper than that. Meaning, I agree with the Janus point is the book from this guy, and I never actually got through the damn thing, but it's a physicist who says that time is complexity, that like you can think of time as an increase in complexity. And I agree with that. And I think that's how we live, is like noting that there's been an increase in meaning. Like the meaning has become more and more complex the more events happen, because the universe has only so many laws. And so this elucidates the laws that it exists as a product of and as an expression of. And it also allows us to feel grounded and centered and understand where we are. This is our way of knowing what might happen next, and having something that's predictable when social information is completely useless to us, or at least whatever's perceptible is not through any means that like it's what other people are doing, so it doesn't even matter. We can't keep up. Okay, let me do new things, old things, all things, do things. That's also the new things, old things, all things, do things. If you're not feeling good, you can just say it out loud and like, I don't know, like take a shower and think about it, and then you don't have to write it down. I so far haven't really felt compelled to do that. Use my motivation, and probably if we had a really different environment, language would facilitate this better. But the language is extremely descriptive of doing as arriving and keeps pinging back. Am I gone? Am I back?
You cut out a little bit, but you're back.
Okay. And I don't think the stream ended, so yeah. Hello.
You were talking about like when you do note and that you don't like always write it down.
Yes. I usually am doing it out loud. So like doing it before you take a shower, when you have some sort of transition to start the day or end the day, is a good time. And it's like, okay, what? Yeah. So you could do it for the day, for some sort of discrete period of time ish. And to me, that discrete period of time is a slice of the resin-filled straw that you can kind of begin with, but then you're going to continue to look down the straw, right? Like that's the new things is the slice of the straw. The old things is everything before that slice. The all things is incorporating the whole thing, looking down at it, you know. And then I think that will actually just simply spawn an action.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like I'm thinking of how often I want to reflect on stuff, because I sometimes over-index on the recent stuff, or like I go too long without, converging on anything. And I've been going in circles a lot, so I'm gonna figure out what works for me.
Well, so my curiosity too. I think like our umbrella of neurodivergent, like what's the right way to put this? Okay, the time that we get to spend with each other as neurodivergent people is brand new, and we may find that we want to categorize, and we have to categorize like what's happened structurally in the brain differently. Not that, and you've brought this point up too. It's not that we wouldn't want to still work together, but we might have differences that are significant enough that we would want to say like, oh, that's actually slightly different. So it's also possible that like there could be something going on with your autobiographical memories where looking at the old things may create other additional problems, right? So if you right, so if you focus on the new things and you kind of like perseverate in some fashion, not even to put the negative stereotype, but like you just keep returning and cycling it, maybe there's something that's causing a problem with integrating it. So that strategy may not be as effective, but even just knowing that, you can start to invent something that would be helpful. So I think that's an interesting problem, because there's something with autism and autobiographical memories, and I don't think we've studied the full range of what autobiographical memories are for us, and we may decide for categories around that too, is what I'm kind of suggesting. because mine, I think they're pretty accurate. So I feel comfortable going there because I've always felt comfortable going to the old things, because I feel like I got high fidelity there, and I don't feel lost in the old things. And but that I you know what I'm saying? Like that's very specific, and I don't know if this process translates if it's not extremely high fidelity and it's comfortable to go to the old things. Because I would even, right? Like if somebody gave me a story about myself that I thought wasn't highly probable, I would actually flag it and say, I don't accept that as a worldview, but I will actually log that was said to me, and then wait until I have enough information to understand why that was said to me. Right? So what universe do I live in where it's possible for that what I think is a low probability thing to be said at a high probability? But that's like a fidelity. I couldn't do that without a certain amount of fidelity in my memory, right? It wouldn't work. So I'm curious about that intersection eventually, but it's like it's getting kind of technical.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I used to feel like my memories, I used to trust my memories more back in like during the pandemic, for example.
Mhm.
And then like with my burnout, I started using call recorders. And then I would go back and listen to I like
Yes.
using Fathom, for example.
Mhm.
And I would go back and listen, and like the vibe would be completely different than what I remember, or like the tone or like what they
Mhm.
said.
Mhm.
And so I realized that my memory or my recall of memories is a lot more biased. That at least now it is. I don't know if it always was. Like
Right.
maybe it wasn't back when I was processing less new info.
Right. Right. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the problem could compound.
So like sensory data that comes into your brain is processed into perception, right? And then your perceptions get stored as memories of what you perceived, right? And so over a period of time, it's also possible for the way that you perceive, like the way that you create perception from sensory information changes, so that listening to the same call with your brain a year later, what you perceive about that call is actually different.
Right.
So it's not that your memory of what it was like perceiving that call at the time was necessarily wrong and you misremembered, but that the same call you perceive it differently now as well as like just another accent.
Yes, and I wanted to add to that too, which I like. So first, I think we should rename a bunch of spectrums. I think we need to rename the schizophrenic spectrum because right now they put some of it in personality disorder, which I think is wrong, and also like hallucinations are something that are like associated very strongly with it, but it doesn't make sense to do that. So like I think currently the people that are all talking together have probably a mixture of and these can be comorbid like ADHD, autism, and actually schizophrenia, like or schizophrenia spectrum, but very very like low disruptions. But what can happen is the environment that you're immediately in will change how you perceive your memories, but you can have artifacts that are not real events that happened in the memories, and they can also be artifacts in the current moment. So like hallucinations are, I think, an extension of that artifacts. I'm getting a little out of my wheelhouse, but I've been having to study this because there's something happening where we're all in one space together, like I think these three groups and variations of like comorbidities. And I think we have one conflict where it's like, well, why do artifacts come into being in our memory and in our current moment that may not be in the physical environment? Where do they come from and why are they there, and what does that mean? And we don't have a good sense of that because we just labeled people who have more extreme versions of those artifacts as crazy and dangerous, when I think that's like incredibly well, I think it's
Mm,
scapegoating. First of all, I think it's incredibly abusive, but I think it's
interesting.
scapegoating from people who uh, are the actual problem, which is like antisocial. So I think like there's like
Mm,
a very sensitive group of people, and like even like the highly sensitive person thing, where we're all together and we're very scared. And the longer we go on, if we
mm,
process information in a way that is disorienting for ourselves or other people, we get pushed out of society because we're confusing other people. And I think there's some amount of like
mm,
neurodivergent people. We're the people that confuse other people, so we're told to just be by ourselves. But we it's not fair for us to
mm,
right, it's not fair for us to then accept the language that's been imposed on confusing people, that has been highly abusive. So I just want to note that because I think that's a factor, and
mm.
that we have a lot of stigma around those three groups of people and all of the intersections between. So I just wanted to mention that because um, that's one of
Mm.
the long term things that I think will come up from doing peer support, is that we're going to find out we want to relabel ourselves, and these categories are fucked up.
Oh, interesting. So you think like when you're hosting autism peer support, you think it's bringing in people from those categories?
Yes, 100%. I think
Like,
it's happened the whole time. Yes. And it's hard because I can't meet the support needs that aren't intuitive to me very well,
mm,
but I see the
yeah.
pain is very similar. And I think so it's made me want to
Mm,
understand more about people who have more I'll call it like episodic memory artifacts. And I've even had like people in my
mm,
personal life who deeply related to me who turned out to have some blend of things where there's definitely schizophrenic aspects. And
mm.
that's some. But I hate. Look at how ugly that term is in our culture. It makes me so angry.
Yeah.
Like, how am I supposed to talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
this? And so right now, autism is enjoying this moment of being less stigmatized. It's still bad, but
Yeah.
so I think I have more people coming over where even doctors will be like, we need to acknowledge something's different about you. We're just going to give you the autism one, maybe the ADHD one, or maybe the inverse, depending, right? But
Mm,
like the least disruptive person out of those three is assumed to be the autistic person, because we're seen as sticking to ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we're weirdos who want to like be in a little
mm,
cave working on things, tinkering. So I think thing going on there where, yeah, these labels suck, and I think everybody is, yeah, is finding the autistic space who is also like a mixture of those things, or whatever that actually is.
anyone else here?
Can you hear
Oh,
Yes,
me?
okay.
James cut out for about 60 seconds. We can
Oh,
hear you again.
okay, that's okay. I was rambling a bit. Yeah, I think that right now, because of a lot of those dynamics of stigmatization, people are arriving people are coming to these autistic spaces, and I think that's like the most likely place for people to actually go who are pretty high functioning, um and it's not obvious that they have like let me think how to put this,
Mm,
other fuck, how do I put this,
mhm.
there's just not
Yeah,
language for
other
this
forms
is
of,
yes, exactly. And
mhm.
it's disempowering for us to not be able to talk about those features, because then it creates like an us
Mm,
and them even within communities, which is not what I want. I
right.
right, it's very frustrating, but I know we might need different tools.
Mm, yeah. Um, I hear that a lot. And I feel like it's like whether it's based on the labels or even like different kinds of lived experience.
Hmm.
Like one difference that I like see in like in different groups, and I actually just left a group like last night. Not gonna like mention what or anything because I don't want to like cause drama, but where I see like this divide between people who are like really like I don't know, feel good for whatever reason, thinking on the spot, and can like respond to things right away versus people who need like more time to process and can like bring more, of themselves to a conversation and like engage in ways that are less, confusing to themselves and others if they can like kind of know, topics ahead of time or like yeah, like hand raising if they need to and like I don't like I find there are some spaces where it's like the extreme of like people who cope in a certain way to the point that I feel less accommodated there than in like mainstream general population spaces because it's like, oh, we're only for autistic people, we're not for everyone, we don't have to accommodate everyone, and so they end up just accommodating this one type of autistic person or ADHD person or what have you. um and like the understanding what's going on in people's brains behind that, that's really kind of you, like how much effort you're putting into that. And I sometimes see like people attempting to do that without really doing the due diligence and like where they kind of project. um like I might say something about my needs or how my brain works and they might be like, oh yeah, that's that, and then they like keep going. um and like I'm having a hard time even getting a word in edgewise to be like, I don't think that's the whole story.
Saying it because you're here. I just wanted. I'm so sorry. Was processing what you were saying, then I had to process what Jamie was saying. No, it's not because you're here. This is an ongoing conversation, and it has to do with like a ton of people that I interact with, even outside of my peer support groups. This. I've been working on this like a lot. I definitely would think that like Jamie, like you make me think about it a bit more. I will say that, but I just wanted to say it's not targeted at you, and then also that like I don't know how to reassure people that something's not targeted at them specifically, but it's not. It's
Oh,
yeah. Anyways, and then I wanted to say to what you were saying too. Can you please, because I was just split a little bit because I was concerned of
oh yeah, for sure.
yeah. What was the
Yeah.
last part that you were saying? Just like the last minute or so.
Yeah, like just about um how like some neurodivergent groups, whether it's for autism or ADHD, which are the spheres that I've explored, um they often like, because there's not the expectation to like at least somewhat accommodate everyone like in mainstream general population spaces, I sometimes come in feeling like more overwhelmed and less accommodated than I do in a space that isn't neurodivergent specific. Or like for me, I actually find that a lot of really great experiences I've had are when like the group is like half neurodivergent or like, there's like an acceptance of it. But like with the groups that are like, we're autistics only, um I have like two groups that I've stuck with total, and like this is one of them. And like you do a really good job, like trying to understand like the differences and like being open to like trying different ways of accommodating them and like talking about it versus like in other groups. I often get this like, oh yeah, yeah, like we're neurodivergent here. We're not, we don't have to like accommodate the neurotypical way of doing things. So we're gonna do what's natural to us. And then it just like becomes what's natural to the leader, which is like a really hard code switch for me to follow and like demands a ton of social flexibility from me without like giving me a heads up or like being willing to like really discuss like how can we make it better. And I find that one of the like challenges that I run into a lot is that I like need more time and space to process things. And like in some groups I feel like I need to either like disengage or like fight really hard to have like space to like communicate stuff. Because it's just, like being put on the spot when I don't want to be, not having space to voice things when I do want it, and then like when I try to explain my needs, just like being projected onto, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to add a note here too, because this is relevant to the broader conversation I'm trying to have. I think I'm failing on some level with Jamie particularly, but like, so okay, what you were saying about your needs, for example, like knowing what something is going to be in advance, and that's associated with autism, right? Where it's like knowing the expectations. But then what if,
Yep.
right? What if some of us are perceiving expectations using a brain function that isn't typical, right? So I don't perceive social expectations very well, but I do perceive some expectations, but I don't know why. So that's like in the realm of like nuance about these things, where we're still given the neurotypical perception as an umbrella term, or as like, you guys are, we see you as the same, so you're the same. And so we like over I'm trying to like over include each other in a sense, like where it's like, oh well, you think the same way as I do because we were labeled the same. Our behavior it looks the same. Yeah.
Yeah, and like not accounting for the difference in lived experience and like the different ways of being. Like for example, sometimes when people say like, just say the first thing that comes to the top of your head, I'm like, it might be complete garbage. And like not
Right.
something I want to put out into the world, not what I feel is like the best way for me to process things or for other people to process things, because like I can derail a space like this for an hour if I'm disoriented enough.
Right.
And holding space for me and telling me that's okay is not the best way to accommodate me. It's to like give me, if it's going to be like a really niche topic, like a heads up about what it's about. Like this space is like, since it's a lot of the same topics most of the time, it's been okay. And also like the fact that you're willing to like explain and break things down. But if people expect like to make progress and make it fast and like not have to, get new people up to speed repeatedly as they keep like entering, then yeah, you got to tell me like what's going on. Or if you expect me to like participate before I know like what's the intention of a space, or yeah, like what reality we're in, or what have you, um then like that's really tough.
That too. That like, okay, I actually want to ask you this. You do better than
So the
go
first
ahead.
thing you said, Jane, you were cutting out. We could hear you now. So if you could start your response
Oh,
to Tara.
yes. The question that kind of comes up that I'd like to ask you is, do you do better in a space where the people at least have stated that they're going to work on maybe one basic thing, like, and even if there's other things they go to, it's to keep working on the one thing. Like if I switch topics, I really do want to keep going back to the ability to fix the motivation and performance gap that autistic people face, like, or even honestly neurodivergent people. Like there's a specific kind of performance gap, and that's so I'm always talking about doing as arriving, doing as building, and was trying to work on that even before I had that language. So that may come through that this space is from that place or that thinking.
Yes. Yeah, I really do feel that, and like I, appreciate that recursiveness there. Yeah, like if I was coming in for the first time, having it stated somewhere like might be helpful, but also like the stream format and how there's not like an expectation for everyone to like participate every time. It's like over time I got the sense of like, okay, like it's like welcome to come back to it in whatever way is relevant to us. That like it's not like we're doing this one time, and if you can't orient, then you're just gonna miss out. Which that's how I feel in a lot of spaces. Um And so I feel like I'm kind of disruptive them. And yeah, to answer your question directly, yes. Like having kind of an understanding of like what this is like what we're doing here. Um yeah, that's helpful.
Right. And actually, so like the sort of dichotomy that Jane was talking about between doing is arriving and doing is building,
Hmm.
um, like this is a place
Yeah.
like a library is a place to go and read and build up your personal
Mhm.
knowledge of what's inside books, right? And that's what that
Yeah.
place is for. This is a place where we all are trying
Mhm.
to find ways to get our daily living, our activities
Yeah.
done while being autistic, right?
Yeah.
And and it's not a social space, right? It is a
Mhm.
space where, however much of building up the answer to this you've done, you could come in, listen to those of us who've been doing it, and if
Mhm.
you want, join in. And if not, you could come back and learn more about this skill and what we've developed or built as like
Right.
frameworks to understand this part of reality. Compared to
Yeah.
another place that's social, you have to keep
Mhm.
up with this this map of what's going on and who's who and how
Yes.
they interact with each other.
Mhm.
And then you get that sense of like you can't go away for a while and come back because you'll have missed on the updating of the like social mapping or something. Right?
Yes. And like when it's ambiguous, like how social spaces versus like intentional and other way. Like one space that really threw me recently is there's this um neurodivergent mentorship app, and they have a community, and they like have these community calls for connecting with people, super vague, right? And then they like start with this 15-minute icebreaker where you're like randomly thrown into a breakout room with people, and like the leaders might or might not be there, so it's like, yeah, like socially norm with this group of people, and when you're finally starting to feel comfortable, you like back into the main room, and then you can suggest topics if you'd like, and it's like free form, whatever you're going through at the moment, and then like people may or may not show up to your breakout room because like they don't know in advance what like, oh, like people who want to discuss this thing are going to be here, and also like the fact that you like have to lead that discussion then, but like the other people there, it's kind of like, hmm, what am I feeling, like what's intriguing, like it feels like the motivations are kind of like misaligned. Like I've seen, like a really good session where someone was able to get support with something specific, but I don't feel like I could reliably expect that just because of like the like figure it out and moderate yourselves. Oh, we're going to switch you up again 15 minutes in. And like the, leader, main founder person is ADHD, and like has been doing neurodiversity advocacy work since college, um found like supportive people from then, and is like still like now like very open about this, so like I can talk about it, but like running into challenges, just like making a living without burning out while like pursuing your passions in this economy, but not like like there are like challenges that things I think about, like with how I engage in support spaces, which are just like really foreign to someone like that. And it's just like I have like so many needs that someone like that doesn't understand. And like her co-founder, like one of them's autistic, but he just kind of like goes with the flow. I feel like, um, and I kind of have mixed feelings. Like in the other group, we were having like this conversation, not like this mentorship group, but like in another group, which you were there, Jane. About like how it's not like our job to make people comfortable, but at the same time I feel like if there's like a banner being put out of like we are for such and such a group of people, it's like if you want to do things in a specific way that's not going to work for half those people, then like specify that that's that, you know. And I know that like it might or might not work out like super early on, and that it might take time to figure out what those things are. But I keep running into this dynamic where people are receptive the first like maybe one or two times, and then they're like, oh, you have even more needs to be accommodated, like just trying to like sideline me a bit, um you know like, oh, okay, yeah, go be alone, go DM me, I may never respond. I'm just too busy chasing dopamine, talking to 100 new people instead, even though like I'm claiming that this is the demographic that I'm supporting. And I'm like, well then update your language or something so you're not putting a bunch of people like me through this.
Well, and even with what Jamie's talking about, like meeting needs, I don't want to exclude somebody and say like you don't. It's not that you don't have overlapping needs, and especially such that like as our like I don't like our current diagnostics. Let me just the diagnostic categories. I think there's a lot of problems. So it's really hard because I have to talk with that language, but then it implies that there's a split at certain points where I don't know that there is. And also I think there may be additional conditions where there may be some mutual exclusivity, but the brain is like Lisa Feldman Barrett talks about this a lot, that the brain is able to do multiple different neural sequencing, like totally different regions, to accomplish very similar behaviors because of what's called degeneracy. It's called degeneracy in neuroscience. So even still, it's like I don't like using the language because some of the things, maybe they're mutually exclusive on paper, but for the time being, that's why people have like odd HD, so we have like comorbidities that are acknowledged clinically, but we end up with like different support needs, and we can't talk about it very well because we don't know why we have different support needs. And when they come up, I may actually, for whatever reason, just the mixture that I have, even if technically we have like basically the same conditions, but they're overlapped in a different way. So there's like an asymmetry, and I not only don't have that support need, that was my strength, right? Like to be able to compensate. So there's a problem there that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I resonate with that. And I also find, like, are you familiar with skill regression? Like with unmasking or burnout? Yeah, so I'm like experimenting with different ways of being, and I find that like I can do A, but not while doing B. And like I think that doing A is good for me, and that requires such and such accommodation that I didn't think I needed yesterday. And like it's really frustrating. I'm finding myself like just kind of like having the expectation that like with neurodivergent support groups, like I could always develop a new need tomorrow that just means okay, bye, I can't engage in the space anymore.
I see.
Just like yeah.
Mhm. 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 I think it's also that reflects so skill regression, as much as it is understood, it's not very clearly defined, like the mechanism isn't defined, right? So
Yes.
then how are you supposed to know when a space that's pretty difficult but you can kind of do it is going to get too difficult?
Yeah. And also like when is the pushing through helping versus hurting?
Mm,
Yeah, like a challenge that I have with some spaces is like they promise a lot of really great things and things that don't exist in many places. But then they make me like jump through a bunch of social hoops before I can figure out whether that level of support actually exists.
I see. Mhm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Do you have a sense of this might actually not have an answer, and that's okay. Um,
Mm-hmm.
are there areas of support that you've been able to label, even if you need to label them like with like a neologism where it's like you had to come up with your own language to talk about this? Like, are you able to at this point categorize like generally the support needs that you're not getting met are about this kind of uh, behavior or topic or activity?
Are you talking about in neurodivergent support groups specifically or just like in my life in general?
I think in general, like I would assume it'd be reflected in the
Mm,
support groups too, but yeah, like I think like kind of in
mhm.
a general sense would
No,
also
in
be
those
helpful.
groups and out of it, but specifically things that are feature of you, like what support needs do you have?
Yeah, it's tough, like coming up with a list off the top of my head.
Oh, sure, sure.
The like need for like space and time to think is a big one. The like need to like prime, to kind of understand what's going on so I can like make decisions about how I want to show up, which I know I've been kind of hyper vigilant and like I'm trying to move away from that.
Mhm.
But I like in like neurotypical or like general population spaces, like like a happy hour or something, it's like things usually start with like unless it's like a networking one, which like those are just like a nightmare. It's usually starts with like lighter small talk and like I can just kind of like hang out until like I want to engage with something versus like in some of these neurodivergent spaces when they're like really trying extra hard to be accommodating, they actually end up like putting throwing me into an unfamiliar situation and putting me on the spot like a lot
Hmm.
more than like in the day-to-day usual situations.
Being put on the spot in that way, do you think like your career, you found ways to find people that do that less? Because I'd be curious if that's part of how you've
Mm,
navigated, right? Like finding spaces where that isn't normal culturally.
yeah, so with my career, it's really tough right now because, like, with entry level jobs, it was easier. It was like very skill based on like what I've learned in college. Um, versus after I like advanced a little bit, which like nowadays it's like there's pressure, like it's not even an option to just have like a fresh grad job. Like they like won't let you, have like a fresh grad job 10 years into your career, even if you like were good at it. For like most roles. Um and so now it's like trying, like with interviews or like interview like conversations even for consulting. It's like they want like a signal that you can solve their problems. And so like I got to try to like orient to what their problems are really fast, and then like show that like I know things that most people don't, but also do that in a way that like doesn't feel overwhelming to them, but also doesn't feel so simple that they think they can figure it out themselves. And like, yeah, with like the prospecting for consulting, like in 2022, people were willing to take more chances. Um, versus nowadays, it's like in this economy, not so much. And so that has been like really, really awful. Um, and yeah, like I feel just very put on the spot. And also like a lot of people, they'll like share, you know, something about why they want to meet, but the real reason is like something um like analogous to it. Um that's not like actually the same thing. Like for example, yeah, I'm feeling really frustrated with this because like there was someone who her friend had connected us, or like she'd asked, like she'd said she was interested in my neurodiversity community that I run like for startup people. And sorry, I'm like scattered. She had said, like asked if I could connect with someone, a friend of hers, to like see who's building a community for like user experience designers, and like where, you know, maybe they might want like to work with people in my community. I'm like, okay. Um so then like I'm like, all right, but where's her interest in neurodiversity from? And then that person put me in a group chat with this third person without answering that question. So I'm like clueless. And then I get to the call, and like turns out that person actually wanted to pick my brain about community building. And I'm like, if that was the case, if I'd known that in advance, I might have known to like bring up that I can, you know, do consulting, like helping people design stuff like that. And if that's somewhere like, now again, the chances that she'd be willing to pay, like, they've been low in general. You know, usually like people experiment themselves and come to their own stuff. But like I was like in this headspace of, you know, thinking about all the things that are necessary to vet like partnerships for this neurodiversity community, when she actually had something completely different in mind. And like similarly, when people are just thinking of hiring me in general, when like, or, you know, considering it, when like I think they might, you know, come up with like need help with a certain thing, and then they come to me with something completely different. I'm just like thrown and not able to give my like best information, which is why I was like, okay, maybe I should niche down like what you're doing and say like I only support people with this specific thing. Which that's still an option, and I haven't like been able to vet, you know, one area where I see like enough demand that I'd feel good about like letting go of everything else. Um, but yeah, now I'm kind of feeling torn back to like, okay, maybe instead of this knowledge expert perspective and seeing like who's down, you know, who's interested in that, I might just hone in on like doing a craft and like, you know, having a tool belt and like being able to tell, you know, okay, in this situation what might be like better. I know that that's kind of all over the place, but it's really tough because then, like, people judge people based on all these, oh, if you're good at this thing, then you're probably also good at that thing. And like the interview processes can be tough in that way. So then I tried moving towards the like, I'll be an expert on one thing um approach instead. And then now I'm running into all these people who get on the call and I think they're going to talk about that, but they actually want like help with something analogous, which is like, ugh, I- now I'm like, I'm back to, well, maybe the skill focus may be better then, and like maybe specialize and be like, yeah, I don't have this other skill because I'm really good at this one skill. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
Okay, so here's what I'm hearing just to like reflect it back to you. Does it make sense to
Mhm.
say because so you got involved in an industry and because you did where they treat first of all like early grads very different than someone that's been in the industry for a
Mhm.
while
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
consistent and yet the industry itself is not consistent at all. So it seems like it's
Yes.
it's yeah, okay, so it's yep, okay, that makes sense. And then your primary problem is to figure out you've already invested in all of this and you're on paper the person that works in that industry but you don't
Mhm.
have an obvious role now and they promised
Mhm.
you on some level that you would that this would make sense and you would know what kind of job description you have and what kind of job you do but that is not the case so you're having to like full time figure out what your job is supposed to be and it seems like
Yeah.
you're analyzing yourself in environments outside of the job to try to figure out why let me think I have to be really specific
Yes.
yeah like why is this not working what am I supposed to be doing you're trying to practice this everywhere and it seems like
Yes.
yeah right okay hmm okay that makes sense okay so
Yeah.
because I would assume you'd be able to enjoy yourself in more environments if your work world or like your career in it's a whole genre of career like this is like a whole subsection of
Mhm.
culture like it's a not a counterculture it's a
Yeah.
yeah like a subculture okay so if they made some
Yeah.
sense you wouldn't have to work on this all the fucking time if you already had like okay this is my
Yes.
job yeah okay okay
Yes. And if like the job descriptions matched like what you already do, if like the interviews matched the skills that are actually needed, then like I could find, yeah, like where do my skills like fit
hmm
within all of this and not have it be this 2 years of testing. And I'm just exhausted. I'm like at this point I'm like, do I just want to do like menial labor?
I see yes right okay yep which doesn't really make sense given your educational and like
Yeah.
yeah right right okay hmm and then this is why like sometimes when you've talked about that subgenre and I'm from the Bay Area so I have this opinion maybe a bias is like maybe some of them are just
Mhm.
bullshitting you and are full of shit and that's why this
Yeah,
isn't
that's a
working
common idea within tech as well.
yeah right so that's an aspect right hmm
Yeah, I know. Like when to play the game of BS versus when to like build skills. And it's like there are like very different people with like different schools of thought on this. And yeah, a lot of people with like certain privileges who don't recognize that they have that. And they're like sending people who don't have that on like wild goose chases, like saying it'll work.
because they don't know why it worked for them they don't know what well, it didn't
Yeah,
work for
like,
them
oh,
something else worked for them that is going unnamed
oh, you're distracted. Well, guess what? I try to focus and a bunch of distracting stuff ends up on my plate.
hmm hmm
Or like, I'll like try to like really narrow down like, okay, I'm only going to focus on these types of opportunities. And then I'll find some reason that they don't feel like they're for me.
right right which they may just simply not be and they may be kind of, yeah, like my concern is that like there's amount of like administrative, bureaucratic,
Mm-hmm.
sort of empty rhetoric, right? Where it's like nothing really, like if you look under the hood, there's like no engine. You're like, oh shit, how is this even running? And it turns out it's running on fucking nonsense. Like people are just pushing the car and saying, wow, look at it go. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yep.
So you're like, okay, what I am hearing it would be fair to say that like your biggest problem is you need a job that other people recognize is like your calling. Like you have like not just a job but a vocation. Like this is something you'll do that other people understand that's what you do, and they don't come to you with other shit, and they don't make you do that for free, right? So that's what is the issue. Oh.
Yeah, it's like basically, okay, they won't let me have the entry level job, which is, you know, like a subset of my like but they'll like talk like they're gonna hire me for like my secret sauce, and then they'll like have me doing random shit instead. And then like be like, actually you're not the best person for this. I'm like, yeah, this isn't why we started talking about working together. Actually, I don't need this. I need something. I'm like, yeah, it's like a lot of people in tech are like fighting to tell their boss like why their job is needed, because there's just this perception of like, we can cut all the jobs, we can have AI do everything.
I see. And then, okay, let's see. Yes, I've heard that sentiment. Do you think if you could come up with like a title for yourself that that you could you feel and know that you could be confident reliably people would understand what it meant, would not ask you to do shit that isn't that, would specifically call on you to do the shit that title confers that you do, would that solve a lot of this for you?
Maybe. I've been trying and not having results. But I mean, maybe I do just need to try a little bit longer. I got overwhelmed in the process of trying and had like a week-long insomnia spiral, which is why like now I'm like worried. Like I'm kind of like taking a break and like afraid to, you know, push after that experience.
Well, and then, but okay, so that makes sense. And okay, if someone could hand it to you, let's even take you out of like having to engineer this.
Yeah.
Like if somebody could say, this Tara, from up and above, here's a little sorting hat, this is actually what you do. Here, now everyone will know this is what you do, will pay you for it, will not even ever dream of trying to not pay you for it when they're asking you to clearly do it, and they won't ask you to do nonsense shit that is not the thing that you do. Would that like feel like, okay, that would actually be extremely helpful and you wouldn't have to work on this problem 24/7?
Yes.
Okay. And that relates to this idea of like specialization, right? Like if you specialize, that might allow that title to suddenly come forward in space, like kind of like 3D glasses. It'll be in the forefront of people's understanding of you.
Yeah, possibly. Although like the, you know, just industry is changing so fast to a point where like I'm afraid to specialize and then have like that industry change into a completely different skill set in 2 years.
Right, of course. And they may say they can also punish you for saying the wrong language since it's so jargon heavy. Like they'll be like, oh, don't you know it's no longer cool to say lit or whatever, their version of lit. Like there's a little bit, I think that text on some level is speaking to each other in the same way that kids speak to each other in slang.
That is hilarious.
Right? And you know, and then it's like you have to show that like you're one of the cool kids and whatever, right? Especially because
Yeah.
they are putting this heavy emphasis on recent grads, and recent grads actually do have, like, you know, at this point,
Yeah.
Zoomer, semi-Gen Alpha sort of slang is coming in. So it's weird. Like we just hired somebody who's like 22, and I can hear the language difference. And I'm like, oh my god, you say slay a lot. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
But you may have your own, because it's a subculture, I think in its own right, it may have its own version of like, you know, hello fellow kids, you don't want to sound like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder how that would go for you. Like, even just this may be a really dumb idea, and I just want to like disclaimer that as much as possible.
Dumb ideas welcome.
Okay, so I like ChatGPT a lot. I think it's very useful for crunching what a lot of people are saying down into like formula that I can say like, okay, what exists? Does this exist? Do people think this exists? Even if they're wrong, this is just going to tell me a summary of what people say exists. Okay, so even just asking it like, what are job titles in my field that sound like what I'm talking about, and pick the most concrete one. Like, this is what I would do. I would do that, and then I would go over to Google Ngram, or there's a couple other good Ngrams that I haven't tried, and just compare the terms that it gives you, see which ones have been around for longer, because those probably will survive a bit better, and like looking at like the trend line of the usage of the word, and see like, all right, which even if it's temporary, the trend line that's going up really steep, maybe you have to call your title that. It would be ideal to give yourself a title that communicates what you're doing very quickly and very consistently, because like, if that is the problem, is like the problem right now, that is going to stand in the way of you getting to do something else. Like, you're just having to work on this problem. That's what stands out. Again, this may be really dumb, but
yeah,
just a thought. Or I mean, that's what stands out to me. Not just a thought.
Yeah.
That's what my brain came up with.
Yeah. I have done that somewhat with ChatGPT. And yeah, I do feel like my understanding has evolved in a positive direction. I just like recently went through a phase of overwhelm. But I'm feeling better now than like a week ago. But yeah.
But the Ngram thing could be interesting if you noodle with that, and then like whatever it suggests, and some of the suggestions might suck, and you know your field better than ChatGPT does. You can steer ChatGPT to be like, actually, can you suggest what about this? What about this? But it would be interesting to see the trend line, and then if the usage is stable and going up, that probably would be a good one. And if it doesn't work, then this whole idea is not good. But like, or I don't know, maybe it'll be like good for some other reason that isn't it actually working. But yeah, because I could like, as long as I've known you, it sounds like this is the problem, is they don't. You work in a field with a lot of job titles where I'm like, is that really a job? Like, do they really do anything? And I'm skeptical that they don't. And I think you live in an environment because of that where they kind of don't want the difference between a bullshit job title and a job title that reflects something very specific and real. They don't want that line to be drawn or clarified or made plain, because then you're going to have a problem, because of the whole, like, there's a whole wealth problem, basically. Like, there's a lot of very rich people that need to think there's a good reason why they have the very rich people good at things trophy. So they're like, well, because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur, whatever. Like, so there's you know what I mean? There's an incentive for reasons greater than all of us that are the economic failures of America and other capitalist nations, I guess. to call out bullshit people on bullshit. So there may be like you're disincentivized to actually draw the lines between like this is a real job and the title just is a real title for a real job versus this is a bullshit title to pretend that this person has a job.
Well, most of the titles like mention real things, but the job underneath might be vastly different. Okay, because like for example, something that I'm seeing recently, I've been looking at jobs with a bunch of different titles, and like a lot of them at the core, what they want them to do is get a bunch of new folks to sign up to like use the app or like to start using it.
Right.
But then they like evaluate the people and like will only not lay them off if the people like if a ton of new people join or if people keep using the thing. But that's like impossible to make happen if the product is like not meeting people's needs.
Yeah.
But it's like they're like outsourcing the responsibility to like, well, that's your problem. That's not your boss's problem. But like you're not allowed the power to like create a better product that people would want
So
to
basically,
buy, but you're incentivized to keep begging them so that you don't get laid off.
You are a numbers go up wizard and or scapegoat.
Yes.
Right. Yep. Yes. Right. But numbers go down because actual physical thing that they built is bad.
Yeah.
I think that's probably part of administrative bloat. And then I think that, in my opinion, that happens because the people who build the stuff, even on like a coding infrastructure level, may have some or too much in my opinion, this is my whole overarching theory, have too much doing as arriving going on in their mode of operating.
Yeah.
So they built a piece of shit scaffolding to get them to the next like good for you trophy and not even a raise, but like actually like a change in status and a change in position. So they get promoted. Yeah, so it's like the thing was built specifically to give the appearance of being a good built enough building that they can use it as a ladder to get to the next promotion. And I think there's way too much of that. So that's why number go down, because thing is shit.
Yeah, exactly. And like their solutions sometimes are like pay people to use it. I'm like, well, they're not going to keep using it.
Right. The incentive is the money.
Else's metric. This person's metric is just to get people to use the thing. They don't need to care if they only use it for 2 days.
Well, could you call people out about this directly? Because that's the other thing, like saying like, oh, like what I am not, a number go up wizard scapegoat. You need to actually change your infrastructure. If people aren't staying, it's because you built a bad thing and you're going to have to fix it. Like if there's some way to do that, I mean, I don't know, maybe the bluntness would work. I like find what personality is popular, I guess, and put it through that filter. But that seems like the issue is like they want the numbers go up wizard scapegoat, and you're not going to be that, because if it's not working, it's not because magical thinking. It's not because of magical thinking, okay? If it's not working, the infrastructure, the program is the problem. So you have to fix. You have to reprogram it.
Yeah. I am trying that. Like I have been trying to like, develop my like kind of like spiel, if you will, or like but like I find that when I come in with like a complete spiel, like people might find like any reason to disagree with it. So it's like a delicate balance of like I still want to like have a conversation and like understand what they already are aware of and what they're not. But like there's just so much to that like like all of that is just such high cognitive load, if that makes sense.
Right. And it's not fair to do it alone, because I'm sure a lot of people are doing this with a co-conspirator, or maybe many, or maybe a lot of this is just like an excuse to pretend that people's friends from college are their true and actual like coworkers and peers when really like they don't do a thing, right? So it's like some of this may just be fluffing up a social group that wants to continue to do favors for each other. That could be part of the problem, right? So if you're outside of the social group or you're not playing your role according to that social group, which is still misogynistic, that could also be a source of scapegoating.
Yeah. Yep.
Which then, I mean, there's reason to get away from that, because that's, if that's true, that's abusive. But then there's reasons to stick in it, because whatever this industry is, then insofar as that's happening, it's a bad industry for anyone to interact with, and it's going to hurt the users, right? So then you can see that as like a duty to do something about it if you can see it. So there's that. But you don't want to be a martyr, because that's not it either, and can be weaponized, because women being martyrs can be weaponized. So like it's complex if I'm getting this right, which I might not be, by the way, but this is my current consolidation of what I'm hearing or / think is going on based on my own my own memory of life.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of that. And yeah, like I've considered leaving tech and like doing something else, but then I'm like, but what? That's like the other question. Because yeah, I feel like the doing as arriving trend is just like this, that mindset is like expanding
Yes.
into other industries now.
Yes, it is. It is.
I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but like, yeah, like with like building physical products, even if like the people are super big assholes, yeah, like you said, if the thing, if gravity crashes the thing, then like they know it doesn't work. But
right.
Now you've got like apps where you can say the code's really fancy when it's not. And you can do things like get people to pay for the app, and then say that the good features are exclusive, and like you get what you put in. There's this culture, and in the community world as well, of like, oh, you need to contribute first, or you need to keep showing up even if you're not accommodated, and then like maybe you just might meet the right person. Like there's so much FOMO.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's,
and like,
yeah. Go ahead.
Like the content creator world, which like people just putting BS out there and claiming they know some big thing. You just need to pay money for the real stuff, which like, but it's sad because like people do need to make a living, and like in theory, if someone had something real to say, it's totally fair to put a paywall on it. But like people are getting super skeptical nowadays, and it's like the people who can write a good BS report that's like convincing that the thing behind it is real are like winning.
Well, and that's why they're doing it. They're doing it to win, right? So the BS report, that is the scaffolding to take them to the next trophy. They want to win. So the thing is made for, so that's the problem is they will make whatever will, not even, if they aren't really making it, they will say, snake oil salesman, this thing does this, and then give me winning, win. So that brain that wants to do that is dangerous, and that's what we don't understand. It's not a quirk. That is dangerous to everyone, because what they will build will be unsafe for anyone to go into or step on or use. It will decrease the amount that the person who interacts with it is able to be okay in their life.
Yeah.
And that's why we have punishments for people like that. That's why we have building codes. So there's no building code for you guys, and you're hurting potentially billions of people because of the reach of some of these things. Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That all tracks.
So I mean, you could look for ethical people who are still involved in that field who have a problem with
Yeah.
that, but you have to be able to then name the problem, which I'm only able to name because I came up with like a whole theory of motivation for the human brain.
Yeah.
I don't know. So like, it's just like I gotta have to get people on that and buy a little bit of buy-in. I'm like, okay, maybe my model isn't the best way to describe this, but I'm pretty damn sure like I've got the elephant's tail and I'm holding the elephant's leg and this is an elephant. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, I don't.
I know.
Yeah.
I really feel that, and I feel like I'm like in a similar place. Well, okay, I got an ear over here, and a tail over here, and a hoof over here, and where do I like who do I talk to
Yes.
about this?
Right.
And like what spaces do I put myself in? And like it's like part of what led to this insomnia spiral was that I like chose not to go to a place that now like looking back I really wish I had, but it just like all of these constant dilemmas about like how to show up in each of these places. Like, oh my gosh. Looking back, I realized I just felt like super detached from myself.
Well, and I don't know if this will apply to that specific case, but if you get this wrong and you have the people that they're winning to win, they will see you as a threat. They may not understand even why they see you as a threat. I sincerely doubt they do. But people will find you attractive if you are building things that don't hurt people and they're building things that hurt people in order to make them win. You'll have some people that like there's kind of like a psychological bonding problem with the abusive person. Like there's people are probably caught in a kind of an abusive relationship. So they're there's a term for this that I can't think of at the moment. Darn. But I'm borrowing from psychology. It's not Stockholm syndrome, but it's kind of like in that vein, like identification sort of with the abusive person. And so like it's so painful to realize how much you've lost while believing the emperor had on clothes and everything he built was actually really solid and that's why they're winning, that people won't. And then you'll have flying monkeys. Like you can create, like, you can like kick a hornet's nest basically, right? But if that doesn't happen, then the trajectory is very bad and maybe we annihilate the species. Whoopsie. You like self-annihilate. Anyways, I not to catastrophize, but like if this scales, it's real bad, yo. So you're at an epicenter of that because of capitalism and how I guess technology interacts with that wealth building. Because you're basically having to go up to people who are investors. Why are they investors? Inherited wealth, and be like, you're a good person. You're a good person. You have money because you're a good person. Thank you for being a good person. That's what you have to do. That's not good. That's bad. You won because you're a good person. Now give me money. Good person. Like you're having to do that, and some of those people may be less problematic, less crazy, dangerous, but all of it's dangerous, I think, at this point because nobody should be a billionaire, for example. But yeah. But that's like a whole other, like people can do that analysis in ways I don't even have the interest in because I think it's like a brain problem that's playing out in things that are called economics or called politics. I think it's a cognitive problem / like, well, that's the best way to put it.
So
anyways,
I personally would question is like how many people doing as arriving actually appeals to versus how many people just feel they have no choice. Like I've met so many neurodivergent people who've like, you know, clasped on hard to the doing as arriving, and like we've talked about the privilege side where like, you know, they like had, you know, abilities to get trophies and then that like, you know, became their MO. But there are also people like neurodivergent or not who just haven't had opportunities to learn how to build. Like they grew up somewhere with bad schools.
Yes.
And like then their way to, their options were abusive marriage or get a shit ton of followers.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's common. I agree with
now
this.
you're like telling them to like do as build when like if they like Google building, like not in those exact words, it's all like a bunch of 16-year-olds being praised because their parents sponsored their building journey. And these like 35-year-olds are like, well, there's nothing there for me.
Absolutely. I know, absolutely. Well, yeah, because the building is still tied to trophy land. Like that's the problem. And most people think of this as like maybe intrinsic, extrinsic motivation. I think that would work. But so intrinsically motivation or intrinsically motivated behaviors still have to be extrinsically rewarded someday. It's weird. So, or else, it has to be, or else you can't continue to do those intrinsically motivated behaviors because everything costs money. So that's like you're going to hit a wall there. Like you can't just be self-taught in your room all day. That doesn't really work. And even when it does work, again, like very young people can kind of power through there's really but it's different, and that you shouldn't have to be a prodigy in order to do that, and they still eventually get extrinsically motivated, and the goal is to try to do it when you're in your prodigy phase, so the extrinsic rewards come fast enough that you don't get the tidal wave of adult costs hitting you, right? You still do it while you're under your parents' care, even if your parents are middle class, so or even lower. So there's a problem there, and then that creates like inspiration porn bullshit, and then it just goes to create more.
Right, and then
well, it's more justification for the system. Sorry, I just want to say, finish my thought. It's more justification for the system as it already stands. So people then who have that very rare circumstance are used as poster children for why this is fine.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's also like now companies are looking for quote unquote intrinsically motivated people who are committed to a craft, and like they want to see a fancy portfolio, and like they have these super long interview processes, and they're like, oh, but if you like love the thing enough, then that would be fun for you. Well, not if you have to take time off from your current job to do them.
Right. Do they want to be they'd have to be your patron. Like, do they want to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, who's going to pay for this? Like, you cannot be intrinsically motivated and only use internal like, I don't know, resources. I can't piss money. I can't piss money. If I could, awesome. I'd have the best time ever. Like, I don't eat food and money comes out, right? So I consume things to live, and it costs money to get more of those. So it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
They need the appearance of intrinsically motivated people to legitimize this idea that intrinsic motivation is possible right now. You need resources to use any form of motivation. If you can't get the things that you need for that motivation to become action, you cannot do it. So that's demoralizing. If you want to, you can't be motivated. If you're in a room with access to nothing, the motivation to do things is all in you either have to disassociate and go into your imagination or something, and that's not great, or somebody has to get you out of that room.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I would say that to understand this problem, you have to have some direct experience with successfully doing as building, right? But we don't have the language to even acknowledge if you did. So there's a lot of successful doing as building in my life that I didn't get to acknowledge because I don't have arriving trophies for it. But that's irrelevant. The arriving trophies may give you the resources to do as build, but if you're able to get away with anything, what you should measure it by is like what you did with the resources you had, And if there's a point where there's a resource cutoff or adult responsibilities drown you in the inability to put resources towards this intrinsically motivated thing, you need to be able to acknowledge that and how messed up this system is then. And then that's tricky because that can introduce to the kicking the hornet's nest. Yeah, and then you can be scapegoated again. So I don't expect the people you're working with to have a very thick understanding of this, at least at this stage in their lives. Maybe people that can have it can have a dawning realization after watching people that they really like get really hurt and people that they really don't like get to quote unquote win. They're like, something's very wrong here. Right? So if people can have that realization, then maybe approaching these concepts would be something that like becomes an imperative, becomes highly rewarding and something they're motivated to do. But you need to do that, and the field is selecting for people who either do as arrive or tolerate doing as arriving as a way to reward money, resources. And then you expect the doing as arriving person to use those resources to do what? Build what? Why would they do that? That's not what they're motivated to do. Yeah.
And it used to be like the arriving expectations were like lower so you could build on the side.
Yeah.
Versus now it's like they take up 120% of your energy.
Right. Yes.
Like these jobs where it's like community manager or like operations person, user experience researcher, and then like you're measured on being able to grow the community by like, you know, get millions of people using the product. And I'm like, there's not going to be space to build anything here. Like, just convince the company to give you money to pay people to use it, and you can keep your job.
That sounds like the phantasmas of people who are doing as arriving, trying to describe how building happens. I'm like, that's not how that works. They wouldn't know. Girl, they would not know. Like if you ask them like, okay, what does building look like? You'll like just laugh. Like just like, I don't know if you can even ask that. Like ask somebody who's got this. Let's just, maybe they'll identify themselves as extrinsically motivated. First of all, tell them that they're very good people. They're so good. They're the best good people. That's why they have the winning. You tell them that, fluff up their ego to the size of like, you know, a planet. And then be like, so how does intrinsic motivation work? And just laugh in your mind for like however long they start to sputter. They don't know. So they're not going to ever be able to design something that facilitates building behaviors, in my opinion. I don't think that's possible. I think it's like, it's exclusionary. It's like mutually exclusive. Like that's not the person that could ever figure that out. That's not what they do. You can if you got them drunk, you could be like, how do you manipulate people? And then you'll get some really good answers for how they did their life.
Or how do you influence people?
Yes.
Like their work.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. So
how do you get people to see the light? How do you get people to stop fucking around? Threats.
And lies about where the threats are and who's doing the threatening and triangulation. It's gonna be that. It's gonna be that. All right. It is 2:56. This conversation was very interesting. I'm going to re-listen to it.
Cool. Wow.
I hope it was helpful. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it. I don't know. Like I hope it's somehow helpful, if not directly, then in the long run.
Yeah, it's reinforcing things. Yeah, I'm feeling many dimensions lost. That also isn't your job to solve it, right? But yeah, like even just keeping my eye out for doing versus building as arriving versus arriving has been helpful.
Yay! That is good, and I'm happy because I built that model.
Yeah.
Like, I think this works. Oh my gosh, evidence it might work outside of me, who might be wrong, because what if I'm crazy?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna pop off because I actually want to review this right away and process more.
Cool.
Have a good Sunday.
You too.
Thank you.
Right.
And thanks
Bye.
everyone in chat. Okay, bye-bye. Good VOD today, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Okay. All right. Have a great day. Good to see you, though. Glad that you stopped by.